World of Warships tips. Okay, so this is a list of tips that I compiled about the video game World of Warships. First of all, some of them are going to be general, some are going to be very specific. Play every class of ship. It will teach you the strength and weakness of each class and how to counter them. So, for example, if you want to know how to counter an aircraft carrier, you should probably play it. I know there's going to be people that don't. And the reason why is because when you play it, you're going to say, well, this is a good hiding spot. This is how I scout. You know, you're going to learn to think like the carrier, and then you'll come up with the counter tactic. That's just an example. Don't hurry to get to the higher tiers. Play at your level. You're going to be a lot happier, because when you get to the higher tiers, it's going to be more competitive, and you won't be prepared for it. And I think, because I did it with World of Tanks in the first 2 weeks, I bought a Tier 8, and I was playing Tier 8, and I had a 38% win rate, and I really didn't understand the game. There's good things about playing in the higher tiers, but in general, try to play in the tier that you're currently in. If you go through the middle, you have more potential targets, but likewise, you are targeted by more enemies. So one strategy you can use is to play in the middle of the map. Obviously, you got to be fully aware of what's going on at all times. If you win by points, you earn more credits and experience as opposed to losing and letting the enemy win. So your goal should always be to win in order to get the extra credits and experience. There's people that don't do it. Show your bow to the enemy when you need to defend. Show your side when you need to fire. Not always true, but it's just kind of a general rule. You want to give a small silhouette to the enemy when you're defending, or when there's torpedoes coming at you. And when you need to fire, show your side. You don't have to always show your side. It depends on the ship. But you got to watch that little mini map. It's not a mini map. You got to watch the little diagram that shows the position of your guns to see if they're all in aiming position to get the maximum firepower. And then what you can do is you position yourself to fire, and then put your bow towards the enemy, and then reposition to fire when the guns are reloaded. And keep in mind, they don't all reload at the same rate. You do not need to be perfectly perpendicular to fire all your side guns. Watch your gun alignment on the ship diagram, and when all of your guns are able to fire, you can keep that angle, which might help you defend against enemy shells or torpedoes. What I mean by that, it might help you defend. You don't have to be perfectly perpendicular. You could have like a 45-degree angle, fire all your guns, and you show less of your side to the enemy. You can even have better than 45. I've done better than 45-degree angle, definitely. If you see the enemy fire at you, change course immediately after he fires, or change speed, and maybe he will miss. If you hear torpedoes, check immediately if you need to change course. It's not worth it to keep on firing. Obviously, there's going to be cases depending on how many hit points you have and how many players are left in the game and how many hit points the enemy players have. But in general, if you hear torpedoes, check to see if you need to change course. Look at the mini-map and the ship diagram while reloading. So people are always going to tell you, look at the mini-map, look at the mini-map. You do it when you're reloading. It's as simple as that. Or when you're driving and you haven't spotted the enemy, you can look at the mini-map, but you won't see anything. Hold the mouse button when firing if you wish to fire rapidly. You can fire a second salvo before the first salvo arrives. If the enemy is far away, you might be able to fire a second salvo before the first salvo arrives, so you don't have to wait until you hit. Use islands to hide or protect your ship. This is a skill you probably want to have, is to play near an island and be able to fire east and west. because it will protect you and it will give you a chance to pop out and go after somebody and then hide. For example, if he's going after your allies, you go after him. If he turns his guns towards you, you go back and hide, and then you go attack somebody on the other side. Chances are his guns are pointed away from you. Know the range of your guns and torpedoes before you start the battle. As you upgrade or change ships, you might get confused. So as you know, ships have different ranges for torpedoes and guns. Very important to know before you start the battle, what are the numbers? This way you have some kind of an idea whether you got a good shot or not. Stick to guns before starting with torpedoes, aircraft carriers, or subs. My advice, if you're a new player, don't go straight to torpedoes, aircraft carriers, and subs. Start out just with the guns. It's a basic armament, and you should learn at least the basics of how it works first, and then move on to a second weapon such as torpedoes, because they're both going to be useful. There's going to be cases where torpedoes don't work, and there's going to be cases where guns don't work. And plus, you don't fire torpedoes as frequently as you fire your guns. So you probably want to know how to use your guns. Try to have good anti-aircraft defense. If you're a new player, you want to have good anti-aircraft defense because they can fire automatically. And if you're a new player, you want as much automated defense as possible. Once you know how to play, it is better to have specialized warships as opposed to the jack of all trades. So when you equip your warship, you could say, okay, I'm going to maximize my air defense, or I'm going to maximize my guns, or I'm going to maximize my torpedoes. It's better to do that than just kind of do a little bit of everything. And I'm not saying that the little bit of everything doesn't work. What I'm saying is if you specialize and you know the weakness of the enemy, you have an advantage. If you are a new player, equip maximum anti-aircraft weapons because they fire passively. That's what I would do. Try to hit a vulnerable area of the enemy ship if you are close enough, as opposed to just firing at it broadside. Certain parts of ships are more vulnerable. And it makes sense. If you look at a ship, you have the hull, you have the bow, you have the stern, you have the guns. They're not going to put the ammunition in the bow, for example. So you know the ammunition's probably never going to be there. So there's a few things you can figure out about the way a ship is laid out. For example, there's a part of the ship that's taller, and if you aim for the bow, you might shoot over the bow. If you aim for the stern, you might shoot over the stern. But if you aim more for the middle, you're more likely to hit something because there's more structures that you can hit near the middle of most ships. Know your hit points when engaging in battle against another ship. The player with more hit points has an advantage. Obviously, it's not always true. It's just a general rule. When you see an enemy ship and you're firing at him and he's firing at you, make sure you look to see how many hit points you have and how many he has. Try to aim such that your volley hits the largest profile of the enemy ship above deck, so your shells don't fly over the deck. Also, the ships usually move forward, so you want to usually aim towards the front, not towards the rear, because if you aim towards the rear, you might miss. If you take damage such as fire, either repair as quickly as possible to get the most benefit until you have more experience in the game. In early tiers, you are unlikely to need multiple repairs. Obviously, you have to learn how to use all the repair features. And in the earlier tiers, you're probably not going to have repeated fires and repeated flooding. So my advice, when you're first starting out, repair as quickly as you can, because you have to know how to do it and you have to learn how it works. When you get into the higher tiers, then you should learn the best way to repair based on whatever the situation is in the game and what ship you're playing. Keep an eye on your hit points to see how it changes when you are on fire. You have to learn what the damage is going to do. You don't want to have a situation where your ship catches fire and it uses up all your hit points and you had the repair kit and you didn't use it. Watch your minimap when you are playing to ensure you do not hit allies, enemy ships, or islands. I'm talking about ramming into them by mistake. You can steer without leaving the sniper mode. When I play, I watch the minimap when I'm steering. I don't go into the firing mode to see if I'm going to hit something. Don't shoot at your allies, it's a waste. The rear of your ship likely has the weakest armor and is the most vulnerable. If you're flying a ship for a specific nation, maybe it means sailing, that does not mean that all ships in the game from your nation are on your team. You might sail a U.S. warship, see another ship with a U.S. flag and be confused and think it's on your team when it isn't. The enemy team is identified as red on the minimap and on icons hovering above the ship, not by the flag it waves. I have some references. Right now, the only one is my submarine video, but I'll be adding more videos as time goes by. I wrote this October 2022. A lot of time has passed since you've seen this video, which is being recorded November 17th, 2022. I might have added more tips, and you're also welcome to come and add more tips. Go to cheapbooks.cc and look for World of Warships in the War Game section using the search bar on the upper right. I believe I have WOWS.video-game-news.com, which has videos from streamers who play World of Warships. And I own cheapbooks.com, which is a website that lists books and textbooks. I don't sell any books or textbooks, but it helps you find a book you might be looking for. If you have any questions or comments, please post below.